Yes.
I'm going to begin by showing you how to make the basic color wheel that your students, no matter what level of their skills, can complete. I'm using 2 pieces of paper. I know in the instruction sheet it mentions one 9x12, but you have 2 9x12s. These 2 are squares. And the first thing I did was to take one of them and find the center. To do that, I connected the corners with diagonal lines. That's how you find the center, actually, of any rectangle, but certainly of a square. Now I adjusted my compass so that it would give me enough space around the edge, not going all the way to the edge of the cardboard. Moving that around, we've got our circle, and then divide it into segments. The best way to do that is to start at any point and mark, and then you move to the next spot, mark again, and as you're doing this, you've divided the circle into 6 equal segments that you can then label primary and secondary colors. There's our 6 segments. I don't really need the circle anymore. I just need to know that those distances. So I'm going to take my ruler or a straight edge and move all the way out beyond the boundaries of the circle. All right, these 6 segments are 3 primary and 3 secondary colors. Whether you want to label them ahead of time, or you want to teach the students to do it, or explain to them why they're labeled the way they are, depends on the skill level. So we have drawn the color wheel. We've got it divided into 6 equal segments. I went beyond the circle and erased it because that way the students can have their shapes go beyond the circle. It's not at the boring color wheel we're used to. But they're equal in size. You can label them, as I mentioned, or you can have your students label them and explain why they are in the order they are, mentioning the primary and secondary. With our second piece of cardboard, we want to make a window that they can glue their colors onto. So for the window, I've made this device I've used for matting for a long time. I cut a square. In this case, since I want a 1-inch window, the square is 2 inches by 2 inches. I found the center again by intersecting diagonal lines, corner to corner, and punch a hole in it with my handy compass. Then I can line this up in the corner, punch that hole, line this up in the lower corner. And now, if you were doing this for matting, of course, you could make it any size you wanted. You could have the sides and top one size, one width, and the bottom of the mat a different one. No measuring. For my students who didn't know how to use rulers, it certainly came in handy. Okay, so I've got that. Now I can use my metal straight edge and a knife to cut this window. Now, if you were using paper, obviously you could use the scissors. You wouldn't have to be bothered with this. But the nice thing is that the knife drops into the hole. So you've got a nice clean corner since you punch that corner. There we go. We're going to attach clear contact paper. Now, some of you lucky young individuals may never have used contact paper for anything. It used to be used for in place of wallpaper and all kinds of stuff. Here's my little window. So once you've cut this out, you can see it makes a nice little window or mat around your color wheel. I'm going to take a piece of the contact paper I mentioned. The most difficult part about the contact paper is finding where the backing and the sticky part are. So I'm going to separate them. Okay, I'll move this aside. And I'm going to lay this down sticky side up. There we go, that makes more sense. And put my little window on top of it. May not be perfect, but it should be okay. There we are. Now, sticky in the middle. That's what we want. You've still got the sheet of paper you took off the cover. So while you're stacking these up at home, or you're putting them on one side of the classroom waiting for the kids to start, you can put this gently on top and then nothing will stick to it. Okay, we have our color wheel. And we're going to label it. Since we haven't yet, let's do that now. I like to start with yellow first, and I'm just using initials. We're going to cover them up so it doesn't matter. You could write yellow, you could put primary, you could put anything you want on there. And then we'll explain to them how red and blue. I want to do this from the back so you can get it upside down. And then, of course, our colors in between, orange, violet. I always want to call it purple, but I guess it's violet, and green. All right. I'm not going to glue anything onto this board. Nothing. But it can be handy to have it there. Maybe I'll just attach it to the table. Then I'll put my sheet on top of it. Now they're not going to move around. And take my cover off. Expose my color wheel. Now the kids can start. So we're going to work on our colored part now. So what I've done ahead of time is go through magazines and catalogs and find my 6 basic colors. Now they're not perfectly red and perfectly orange and perfectly green, which is good because you'll see some variety in the colors. And instinctively, as I've said before, they're going to move one color into the other. They can start with any one they wish or up to you. Now, what size have you cut or torn these pieces of paper? It should relate to the size of your color wheel. If it's going to be very large, then the pieces can be pretty large. But if it's going to be smaller, you have to think whether your kids can manipulate these tiny pieces of paper or not. And remember, now you're the student. Now one hand is tied behind your back. You can't pick up any papers with this. You certainly can't glue them down. So I only have one hand to use when I start with my yellow. Okay, maybe I could do more yellow in that same little segment, different kinds of yellow. I wish these are smaller now. And you as the teacher should have a glue stick and a scissors handy in case the kids need help. They can't all do what they want to do. I'm gonna line this up with my yellow corner. There we go. Okay, should I move to the green? Maybe I'll start with my yellow green. Boy, I wish these were tinier. I don't know if they can cut with those scissors, then I guess they can do that. They do a lot with less skills than I have. Let's put this in the green segment. There we go. And we'll put the blue where the blue belongs. A violet. See if I can find a good violet. They're hard to find. There's a violet and a bit of a red. Orange. And they continue until they fill the entire color wheel with all the colors. I don't know if I could do all that. We're going to start the second project based on the same skills and arrangements and supplies as our first. And there's a handout in the information packet that includes instructions like this. We're going to start with our 2 pieces of board. Actually, I just have one that I folded in half, and I've already covered the inside of it with a piece of the contact paper, just like before. This time we're going to do an image instead of a simple color wheel. So we all still need scraps of colored paper, ripped or cut into a variety of sizes. And again, I encourage not just solid color, but polka dots and textures, even like grass and things that you can recognize. Makes it a little more interesting. What we're going to use for our subject matter is landscape. What I've done, and what I would highly recommend you do, is use calendar pictures. Calendars, but my friends belong to a lot of different charities. They get calendars. They don't need. And calendars right now, of course, are very inexpensive because it's already March. So you can let the kids select a calendar picture, or you can pass them out depending upon how much time and patience you have. They have their landscape picture with a piece of wet medium acetate on top so that the marker doesn't smear. And they're going to be using a Sharpie to trace around things that are the same color or texture. Not a lot of detail. They can do it quickly. They're generalizing. They're grouping. Grouping is an important skill, as is tracing. It's an important thing. I'm doing a much sloppier job than your students will, I assure you. But you get the idea. This is not the artistic part, so it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Some will break it down much more than others. It depends on the child and their ability to see and how much patience they have. And the pictures are a decent size from the calendar, so I strongly suggest you say, oh, I better put in a couple of these cloud shapes too. All right, there's that. Okay, we're going to take this acetate outline off of the picture and put it underneath the contact paper. I like having this white sheet behind it. It's a little bit easier to see. There we go. Let me take the contact paper off. There we are. There's my composition based on this landscape. Now, I would encourage kids can do whatever colors they want. They can make these bushes and trees red if they want. They can make the mountains blue. They have those choices. But they can take these pieces and use them to fill their landscape. They're not going to be exact. They're not supposed to be exact. And they're going to vary tremendously from segment to segment. All right, so I need some green trees up in here is what I want to use. Take a little bit of this. Some more of the orange from my mountain here. Maybe I'll do some purple on this side. Add a little more blue. I want to use a little more yellow, blue over here. Okay, as we're moving along, we can see the different shapes and textures are coming out in our collage as well. It's not, obviously it's not an illustration of the magazine picture or the calendar, because if we wanted that, we take a picture of it. This, get the glove back on, I'm cheating. This is a means of them designing their own composition. They make some really good decisions based on the options that they have. A little more. Find the right size. This is hard to do. It's harder for me than it is for the kids. You know, my students are the ones that I've had over the years. They're just much more flexible. My special ed students certainly much more flexible than my others in terms of having things that look like they want them to look. Much more willing to and accepting of variations. I want to do some small yellow ones here, if I can find a couple little ones. There's one. When you look on the information that's been sent to you, you'll find examples along with the patients who did them. They're all the examples that you see were done by patients and not by students. Well, patient students, I guess. Okay, a little green over here. How are we doing?